This sort of feels like the difficult second novel. The last video I put out on this channel is my most successful video ever, which caught me off guard, but I'm very happy that there are more of you out there watching my videos, so thank you for subscribing and welcome along. I'll try to live up to your expectations, I guess. This is my wrap-up video. I do these every month, and I try to go through the books I read quite quickly, so if you have further questions, you can just leave them in the chat. And if everyone is wondering about the same thing, I'll probably make another video. So I've been reading Harry Potter for a while now, and I'm currently on the last one. I thought I'd make another video, or people have asked me to make a separate video about them, so I will. So that will probably come out in February sometime. I'm now on the last one, and I've sort of just got 2 or 3 hours left of listening. The whole reason why I started listening to them was because of Stephen Fry, so that's sort of the deal. And I will save my thoughts. I can say that I liked all of the books so far, and I knew that was going to happen, but there is so much more to talk about, I guess. So we'll get back to that later. In short, I've spent a whole lot of time with Harry Potter in January, but I also read this one, Be My Baby by Ronnie Spector. So this is maybe one of my only impulse buys when it comes to books. I saw this and I knew who she was. She was a part of the 60s group The Ronettes, and she was married to Phil Spector. For those of you that don't know, Phil Spector was a producer and a madman. And a big chunk of this book is about their relationship. The majority of this book is about their relationship. But it's also a very useful and interesting insight into the 60s and how the music industry worked or didn't work. Because she didn't make any music of her own. She was just invited to the studio if a producer liked her personally or thought she was a good singer or both. And this meant that she would have to be pleasant to all producers in the hopes that they would have them in a band or by themselves in the studio. So that dynamic is really toxic because she had no choice. If she wanted to become a singer, she just had to say yes to everything, it felt like. I guess this isn't really news, but the fact that she was friends with both Rolling Stones and the Beatles in the 60s, and then she had to sort of let go of them because Phil Spector told her to. There's a lot to uncover in this book. It's disturbing, and since it's about music, I liked it. But I would say that this book is mostly about the abusive relationship and just an insight into the 60s and how things practically didn't work. But at least the book I enjoyed. Then for something a bit more pleasant, and it's Moominsummer Madness by Tove Jansson. So the Moomins are huge in the Nordics. I recently visited Finland and the Mumi shop at the airport, which was fun. But the thing is that everyone in the Nordics have like the Moomin cups, and I was brought up watching the Moomins on TV. Those that came before me could have watched it on TV as well, but also they bought the books. This is the first time I actually read a Moomin book, and I was not disappointed. The characters are great. The topics are grim and huge. You could put your whole imagination into this and drag out like social realism from it. So it's not like your average nowadays children's novel, I would say, without me having read all of them. It paints a bigger picture, and yeah, it's what you yourself put into them, I guess. When I read this, I thought several times that the language felt kind of hard. So in the way that they describe events or people or relationships, there's nothing put in between. Often it's just straightforward. You're bothersome, you should die. I can't really agree with myself if it's just that the language is older or that the generation that grew up during the Second World War had another layer of, I don't know, shielding layer. They didn't care as much, and I think that shines through in this one. I think you all should read the Moomins just because the characters are great and the stories are fun and kinda absurd, but also really, really dystopian at times, and I loved it. So I knew I would. I knew the story from before, but it's different reading it than watching the cartoon, I guess. Last month I did quite a bit of traveling, and I have promised myself that when I'm traveling I'm only going to bring the Kindle because well, it's convenient. It also forces me to read other things than I normally would do. If this is a positive or not, I don't know. But the first book I chose to read was In the Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. This is a classic about when Conrad went to Congo in the 1800s. I downloaded this book to my Kindle a long time ago, but I was afraid of how brutal it would get, so I've put it on hold for a bit, but now I felt like I was ready. I don't know why. This whole reading experience ended up being messy. Sometimes I felt like I wasn't reading the same book. There was no description of this is what I'm doing, this is what happened, and now I'm finished and I went home again. It's more episodes just thrown in there and mixed up, or at least that's how it felt. Maybe I was tired when I read it, but I couldn't get a grip on it, and it's not really a chunky book. I read it in the course of 2 or 3 flights, so time passed quickly. My flights are usually short, just so that's noted, but I don't know what this book wanted with me. But at least it wasn't as dark as I thought it would be. I thought this would just be a gruesome read from start to finish, but instead I ended up just being confused. I wasn't disappointed that it wasn't more gruesome, but I just imagined you're in Congo in the 1800s. So many terrible things happened there, so I thought it would be worse. But since it wasn't worse, I thought I'd try to dial it up a bit, and I read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. This is his memoir from when he was in a concentration camp from 1942 to 1945, and he's now known as a psychiatrist. I don't know if it was that before he went in, but the whole book is basically about his thoughts around survival and what made him stay alive, and less about the day-to-day situations, the day-to-day struggles in the camp. It's more like, what did I think of to survive, and what do I think is the most important for other people, no matter the situation? How could they best be happy, I guess. I sort of knew what I was getting myself into when I started reading it, but it was way more about psychological concepts, and I don't know if he spent the time in concentration camp trying to develop like new methods to describe behavior, or if that happened afterwards, but at least that is a big part of the book. And there are so many different editions. I read an edition that was probably a little bit more about like what happened afterwards as well, not only the things that happened in the camp or his thoughts while being there. So it's impossible to dislike a book written about your own stay in a concentration camp. I've read one book earlier that has made a huge impact on my life by Herman Saknowitz, and it also concerns you. I don't know if that's the translated version, but it's like reading about something that intense, being in concentration camp. There is something terribly fascinating about the suffering and how people change. It will sort of never stop having my attention just because it's one of the lowest points in human history, and well, terrible stuff keeps on happening, but that's sort of just a industrialized version of the whole thing. I don't know. This was a useful read because all of his thoughts can be applied to your own life, and it really, really puts things into perspective, of course. I tried taking some of his concepts into my own day-to-day operations, and well, there are stuff to improve. And also in the way he thinks, you can really get a lot out of it. I understand how some people read this and it changes their lives because it's really specific to situations, and he gives you really specific advice to what he's himself felt. It's worth reading. Of course it's worth reading. It has a Goodreads rating of 4.37, and I think it's about 600,000 people have given it a review, so it's worth the read. And that was also the last read I did for this month. I don't really know how to sum this up. Be My Baby was definitely my favorite read, but it's a music memoir, so I knew that was going to happen. And also, I'm still enjoying Harry Potter. We'll come back to you with a review of the whole thing, or a review. I will talk about the books at some point. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you have a pleasant day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!